title. I left without saying goodbye, thought she moved on, until she knocked on my door. Part 1 of 8 Reddit Confessions. Posted by you/sleepsOnCouch92. The night she burned the spaghetti was the night I decided to disappear. Not because the spaghetti mattered. It didn't. I wasn't even hungry. But something about the way she slammed the pot down, let the noodles stick and boil into one angry clump, and then laughed like it was all some cosmic joke. That was the final click in a series of moments I didn't even realize had been pushing me toward the edge. She didn't even glance at me. Just scrolled her phone with her thumb like the pot didn't exist, like I didn't exist. That's when I knew I had become background noise in my own life. So I left. Not dramatically. No yelling. No notes. I unplugged my phone, walked out the back door with a half-packed duffel, and drove east. I didn't check the map. I just drove until the sun was behind me and my heart stopped hammering. That was 18 months ago. Since then, I've become the kind of guy who talks to his kettle while it boils, who apologizes when the fridge makes a weird noise. I exist in quiet routines now, early walks, second-hand books, and too much instant coffee. No one knows where I am. Not even her. Especially not her. Or so I thought. Last week, there was a knock at my door. Not a loud, urgent bang. No, this was worse. It was soft. Familiar. Like someone testing the past with their knuckles. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the door, holding my breath like it owed me money. And then, her voice. Clive? It's me. I don't even know if you live here, but I needed to try. I should have stayed quiet. Should have let the moment pass like all the others I've buried. But my hand reached for the doorknob before I could stop it. And in that moment, as the weight of 18 months collapsed in my chest, I realized something. I never really left. I just paused the pain. I didn't open the door right away. I stood behind it, frozen, like I could blend into the wallpaper if I just breathed quietly enough. My apartment was dim, lit only by the flickering blue light of a paused Weather Channel forecast, the kind of background noise I clung to these days. And yet, the second I heard her voice, it was like everything else in the world muted. Clive, she repeated, her voice quieter this time. I know it's late. Please. I don't want anything. I just need 5 minutes. I felt my palms sweat against the doorknob. My body was caught between instincts, open it and face whatever hurricane stood on the other side, or stay silent and let her think this place was just another dead end. I wasn't ready to see her. Not Dina. Not like this. And yet, there I was, unlocking the chain. She hadn't changed in the ways I thought she would. No dramatic haircut. No visible signs of chaos. But there was something deflated in her stance. Her coat was damp, maybe from the drizzle that had started just an hour ago, and she looked exhausted, not in a physical way, but like someone who had been screaming into a void for months with no reply. Hi, she said, clutching her purse to her chest like it might fly away. I didn't say anything. I just stepped back, leaving the door open behind me. She walked in slowly, like the floor might break under her weight. Her eyes moved across my space, the mismatched furniture, the unopened mail, the lonely plate in the sink, and I could feel her trying to piece together who I had become in her absence. I didn't expect to find you here, she finally whispered. I thought maybe. I don't know. Maybe you'd changed your name. Started over. Left the country. I gave a dry chuckle, not because it was funny, but because it felt like the only sound I could make without breaking apart. I thought you did, I said. Start over. That's when she looked at me. Really looked at me. The kind of stare that cuts through the skin and goes digging for the parts you tried to bury. I had rehearsed this moment so many times in my head. In most versions, I was cold, distant, indifferent. But standing there, face to face with the woman who once danced barefoot in our living room to songs we never learned the words to, I felt something different. I'm not here to beg, she said softly, voice trembling just enough to betray her rehearsed tone. And I'm not going to pretend like I didn't destroy everything. I just need to tell you something, and then I'll go. I nodded once, stiffly, like it hurt to move. She sat down on the very edge of the couch, not even touching the throw blanket I kept neatly folded, and pulled out a folded sheet of paper from her coat. She didn't hand it to me right away. Clive, do you remember the morning you left? The spaghetti night. How could I forget? That moment was seared into my brain like a brand. I said nothing. I wasn't just angry, she went on. I was scared. I had just found out something that I didn't know how to tell you. And instead of trusting you with it, I ran to someone else. Someone who made me feel invisible. I blinked. You mean visible? No, she said, meeting my eyes. Invisible. Like I didn't have to answer for anything. Like I could just float through his life and pretend I wasn't hurting anyone. Silence filled the room like thick fog. What was it? I asked, eyes drifting to the paper still in her hand. She hesitated. Then slowly, she placed it on the coffee table, smoothing it with her palm. I wasn't pregnant, she said. I was sick, and I didn't know how to face it. So I sabotaged everything. I broke us because I didn't want you to watch me fall apart. My knees buckled slightly as I sat across from her. My throat dried instantly. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't either, she added quickly. But I thought you should know that I didn't just replace you. I ruined something beautiful because I was too weak to admit I needed you. I didn't touch the paper. I didn't ask what kind of sickness. All I could do was sit there, flooded with 100 emotions I had spent a year trying to outrun. Confusion, grief, rage, but also guilt, for thinking I had been the only one who suffered. She stood after a moment. You don't have to say anything. I've said what I came to say. And just like that, she turned toward the door. But before she reached it, I said quietly, Dina, do you still have that blue hoodie? The one you stole from me? She stopped. Her shoulders trembled. Then, without turning around, she nodded. I wore it yesterday, she whispered. It still smells like your old cologne. Then she stepped outside, closed the door, and I sat there, staring at that folded piece of paper like it was a ticking clock, and I had no idea what would happen when the hands struck midnight. That folded piece of paper sat on my coffee table for 3 full days before I opened it. 3 days of pacing past it, glancing at it out of the corner of my eye like it was a live grenade. I'd tell myself I wasn't curious, that I didn't need closure, that her explanation, whatever it was, wouldn't change anything. But I was lying, and I knew it. The truth is, I was terrified that reading it would undo the fragile numbness I had worked so hard to build. I was doing okay. Well, relatively speaking. I was surviving in this tiny apartment with my half-washed dishes and my lukewarm dinners and my nightly routines of old crime shows and even older regrets. I had accepted the silence, made friends with it, even. But she'd shattered it with just a knock. By the 3rd night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, that folded sheet glowing under the moonlight coming through the blinds like it was daring me to pick it up. My heartbeat was louder than the refrigerator hum. And finally, somewhere around 2:30 in the morning, I sat up, turned on the dim lamp, and reached for it. I unfolded it slowly, hands trembling like I was unwrapping something sacred and poisonous at the same time. It wasn't long. A single page. Her handwriting, messy, rushed, filled only half of it. But the words hit like a punch to the chest. She'd written, Clive, I couldn't tell you face to face because I was afraid you'd look at me with pity. I don't know which is worse, you hating me, or you feeling sorry for me. After that night, the spaghetti night, I went to the ER. I had been ignoring the symptoms for weeks. I thought they were just stress. They weren't. Stage 2. Ovarian. I started treatment 6 days after you left. I didn't reach out because I thought maybe it was easier if you hated me. I thought maybe I deserved to be alone for how I treated you. I don't know if I was running from death or from myself, but I ran. I'm not here to win you back. I swear. I just needed you to know the truth, finally. Dina. I read it twice, then a 3rd time, and when I couldn't read it anymore, I just stared at it like it might rewrite itself into something easier to accept. Something that didn't leave my stomach hollow and my hands shaking. My brain kept cycling through fragments. I started treatment 6 days after you left. I deserve to be alone. I'm not here to win you back. I sat there until morning, that sheet still in my lap. And by sunrise, I was angry. Not just at her, but at myself. Because I realized something brutal. For over a year, I had cursed her name, painted her as the villain of my life story, but never once did I stop to wonder if there had been something bigger happening beneath the surface. And now, suddenly, I didn't know who the villain even was. Later that afternoon, I opened my email for the first time in weeks, the account I used before I disappeared. I wasn't expecting anything, but there it was. One unread message. From 2 months ago. Subject, I hope this still works. I clicked it open, and the words punched me in the throat. Hey Clive. I understand if you never respond to this. I'm not writing to disrupt your life. But I'm scared. And I guess I miss my best friend. D. That line. I miss my best friend. It broke something in me. Because no matter what had happened between us, no matter how wrecked we were, she was my best friend. And I had been hers, before the chaos, before the cold silences, before the laughter turned into locked phones and broken spaghetti. I didn't respond. Instead, I got in my car and drove. Not to her place. I didn't even know if she still lived there, but just to move, to feel like I was doing something instead of drowning in stillness. I ended up at the pier. The one she used to drag me to every summer, where she'd eat greasy fried shrimp and tease me for being afraid of seagulls. I sat on a bench for hours, coat zipped to my neck, watching waves roll in and out, feeling the wind bite at my ears. I stayed there until the sun dipped behind the horizon. When I got back to my apartment, I found a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. It was her voice. "Clive, it's me again. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have shown up. I don't know what I was thinking. But if you ever want to talk, even just once, I'm here." Then she hung up. I sat on the floor next to the phone for a long time. And for the first time in over a year, I realized I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt scared. Because I didn't know what scared me more, that she was sick, or that a part of me still loved her. The night after I listened to her voicemail, I didn't sleep. Again, not even a little. I just lay there, fully dressed on top of my sheets, watching the headlights of passing cars stretch across my ceiling like ghosts pacing back and forth. I kept replaying her voice in my head, the way it trembled when she said she was sorry, the way she hesitated before saying, "I'm here." It haunted me more than anything she'd ever done before. And yet, I didn't call her back. I couldn't. Not because I didn't want to. I did. God help me. But because I knew that once I stepped into that space again, even for a second, I wouldn't be able to walk away clean. I was still bleeding from the last time I tried to hold her. I wasn't sure I could survive another cut. But then, something happened that forced my hand. It was the following Thursday. I was outside the laundromat 2 blocks from my place, standing by the vending machine debating between salt and vinegar chips or a sad packet of trail mix. I went with the chips. As I turned around, chip bag in hand, I saw her. Not Dina him. His name was Simon. I didn't know that when I first left, but I found out eventually. You'd be surprised how easy it is to find someone when you have no other distractions in life. Turns out, he worked in real estate. His LinkedIn was obnoxiously self-congratulatory. Smiling headshots. Gold watch. A quote about conquering your own kingdom or some nonsense like that. He was the one I'd seen that day outside the house when I knew something was wrong. And here he was again, months later, walking out of a convenience store like nothing had ever happened. Except now, he looked different. No watch. No flashy jacket. His posture had that limp, tired energy like someone who'd recently had a door slammed in his face one too many times. Our eyes locked. He recognized me instantly. His smirk vanished. And to my surprise, he was the one who looked away first. I didn't say anything. I just watched him get in his car, a modest sedan, not the gleaming SUV I remembered, and drive off. When I got home, I couldn't let it go. Something about seeing him like that lit a fuse inside me. I grabbed my laptop, opened a blank search, and typed her name. There wasn't much, but I did find a fundraiser page. It was titled simply, "For Dina, with love." It had been created by someone named Marcy, her old coworker. The page mentioned chemo treatments, complications, and a string of hospital stays. The most recent update had been 2 weeks ago. "She's tired, but still fighting," it read. "She's back home now, resting. We're all taking turns checking in." I stared at that screen until the words blurred. Back home. Resting. Tired. And I realized in that moment how much I didn't know. How much I'd chosen not to know. I had built this entire narrative in my head, the villainous wife, the smooth-talking affair partner, the abandoned husband, but the real story had kept going while I paused mine. I closed the laptop, sat in silence. Then I did something I hadn't done since the day I left. I went back to our old house. It was late, almost midnight. I didn't expect her to be awake. Honestly, I didn't even expect to make it past the end of the street. But my car just kept moving. The tires remembered the way. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Dark, except for a single lamp flickering in the upstairs window. I parked across the street, engine still running, hands clenched on the steering wheel. I was about to drive away when the front door opened. It was her. No makeup. Slippers. An oversized hoodie I hadn't seen in years. She stood there for a moment, as if sensing something. Then, unbelievably, she stepped outside and looked right at my car. I froze. She walked slowly down the path, hands tucked into her sleeves like she used to do when she was cold or nervous. She crossed the street, stopped at my window, knocked. I rolled it down, heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack a rib. I knew you'd come, she said softly. I don't know how, but I did. I couldn't speak. My throat had tightened into a fist. I saw you in the donation list, she continued, her voice breaking just slightly. You used your old nickname. The one from the beach trip. Clamdigger 92. I looked away, embarrassed. I just wanted to help. That's all. I know, she whispered. But I don't think that's all you want. And I hated that she might be right. She stood there in silence for a moment. Then, before I could say anything more, she opened the passenger door and sat down beside me. I'm not asking for us to go back, she said. I don't even know what we are now. But I'm tired of being scared. Of dying alone. Of pretending you didn't matter. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the weight in her eyes. The kind that doesn't come from guilt, or even sickness, but from holding your breath too long in a life that never felt safe again. I didn't reach for her hand. But I didn't drive away either. We just sat there, in the quiet, in the middle of the night, as two people with a long road behind them, and maybe something still ahead. The car was silent for what felt like hours. Just me gripping the steering wheel like it might hold the answers to everything, and her sitting in the passenger seat, quietly folding and unfolding the cuffs of that hoodie I hadn't seen in years. She used to steal it from me in the early mornings and wear it around the kitchen while she made eggs. Now it hung loose on her like it didn't quite remember who it belonged to. The air between us wasn't just heavy, it was crowded. Crowded with everything we hadn't said, everything we were both too scared to say, and everything we knew we couldn't undo. We weren't husband and wife anymore. We weren't even really friends. We were two ghosts sitting in the same haunted house, staring at the walls, trying to recognize the old wallpaper. I thought about sending you the letter earlier, she said after a while, her voice soft like she wasn't sure she was allowed to speak. So many times. But I figured you'd laugh, or block me, or maybe just burn it. I shook my head slowly, eyes still fixed on the road ahead, even though the car hadn't moved in half an hour. I never hated you, Dina. She flinched at that. You should have. I know, I said. And I did. God knows I should have screamed at her. Slammed doors. Called her every name in the book. But I didn't have it in me. I just left. Quietly. Like a coward, or maybe a man who'd just run out of fight. She took a shaky breath and leaned her head back against the seat. It wasn't just about being sick, Clive. I know I said that. But the truth is Messier. I glanced at her. Messier than a secret diagnosis and cheating with a guy from your phone contacts? She gave a pained smile. Simon was never what I wanted. He was what I ran to when everything else felt like it was caving in. That makes it worse. I know. I turned off the engine. The sudden silence made the moment feel even more naked. Do you want to come inside? I asked before I could stop myself. She looked at me surprised. Your place. I nodded. Yeah. Just for tea or something. It's cold. Dina hesitated, chewing her bottom lip like she was trying to figure out if that was a good idea. But she nodded eventually, slowly, like her body didn't trust her heart. Back in my apartment, I realized how foreign the place must look to her. Sparse furniture. No decorations. Just piles of old books, dishes stacked neatly in the sink, and one framed photo on the shelf of us. From a time before everything went sour. She noticed it immediately. You kept that, she asked. I didn't answer. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. My hands were shaking slightly, so I busied them with spoons and tea bags while she wandered the living room like she was tiptoeing through a memory. Clive, she said, from behind me. Do you remember the day we bought that plant? The stupid one that kept dying no matter where we put it. I smirked. The fiddle-leaf figure, I think we named it Harold. Her eyes lit up. Yes, Harold. You moved into every room like you were trying to find his happiness. Turns out, I said, turning around with 2 mugs in hand, he was just never meant to live indoors. She took the mug, her fingers brushing mine, and we stood in silence again. This time, it wasn't unbearable. Just fragile. I'm not here to rewrite anything, she said, more serious now. I'm not asking for a reset or pretending I didn't screw things up. She looked up at me. I just miss knowing someone who saw me. Even the ugly parts. That did it. Something broke loose inside me, not anger, but sadness. A deep, marrow-level ache. Because I had seen her. I had loved all her messy pieces. And even now, even after the betrayal, even after the emptiness, I still saw her. Sit down, I said quietly. We sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, sipping tea like we were 2 strangers who somehow remembered everything about each other but didn't know if they were allowed to say it out loud. Then she asked me the question I hadn't expected. Have you been with anyone? The air tightened. No, I said after a pause. I haven't even been on a date. She looked down, nodded. I didn't think so. You're the kind of man people don't appreciate until it's too late. I wanted to say something biting, that she was the first one to prove that theory. But instead, I just said, I stopped trusting people after you. She closed her eyes. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. I'm sorry, Clive. I don't know how to make it right. I shook my head. Maybe it doesn't get made right. Maybe it just gets understood. She reached across the table, slowly, and placed her hand over mine. Her skin was colder than I remembered. Thinner. Like a page that had been turned too many times. I don't know how much time I have, she whispered. They say I'm stable, but stable just means not collapsing today. And I don't want to waste whatever time that is avoiding the one person I loved right. My chest tightened. All the years, all the nights, all the wounds, they were still there. But so was she. And somehow, we were both still standing. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew she wouldn't be sleeping alone tonight. And for once, neither would I. I woke up before the sun did, still sitting in the armchair, knees stiff and back aching like hell. Dina had taken the couch without even asking. She folded up one of my old flannel blankets and laid it across her like she'd never stopped living here. I watched her sleep, not in a creepy way, more like I couldn't believe she was actually real and not a figment of my exhausted brain. Her breathing was slow, shallow. There was a bottle of pills on the coffee table beside her, the kind with a name I couldn't pronounce and a warning label that spanned half the bottle. It sat there like an uninvited guest, quietly reminding me that no matter how familiar this felt, we weren't who we used to be. We never would be again. Around 7 a.m., she stirred, rubbed her eyes, and caught me staring. You always did that, she mumbled, voice thick with sleep. Do what? Watch me like I might disappear. I gave a weak smile. To be fair, you kind of did. She didn't argue. She just sat up, running her fingers through her tangled hair, and looked around like she was seeing everything in daylight for the first time. Didn't think I'd still be here, she admitted. I didn't think I'd let you be, I replied. We sat in silence for a while, not the awkward kind, but the kind that feels like two people standing on a ledge, knowing one wrong word might send them falling back into something they barely survived the first time. Then she said something that cracked the air. I think I want to tell you the whole story. I looked at her, cautious. You mean more than what was in the letter? She nodded. Everything. Even the part that makes me look like the worst version of myself. So I made us coffee. 2 chipped mugs. Black for me, almond milk for her. I still remembered. We sat at the table again, and this time, she leaned forward like she needed to anchor herself before saying it. I started seeing Simon a month before the spaghetti night. I blinked. You were already? Not physically, she interrupted, quickly. But emotionally? Yeah. I was already halfway gone. You were working longer hours, and I was convincing myself you were pulling away, when in reality, I was the one pulling. I didn't speak. I just watched the way her fingers trembled around the mug. I told myself it was harmless, that I deserved a little attention, a little excitement. But then the tests started coming back. The blood work, the scans. I was terrified, and instead of telling you, the one person who actually would have stood beside me, I shut you out. I leaned into the chaos, because it felt easier than being vulnerable. A lump formed in my throat, but I didn't let it surface. I just asked, did you ever love him? No, she answered immediately. And I know that sounds convenient, but it was never about him. It was about escaping the mirror. And he didn't know, either. Not about the cancer. Not about you. He was a fling. A distraction. Doesn't make it hurt less, I said, voice flat. I know, she whispered. She sat back, wiping her eyes. The night you left, I found your letter. I don't think I've ever sobbed harder in my life. Not even when they said I needed chemo. You wrote like someone who had already been grieving for months. I had, I said. I just didn't know what I was grieving for yet. I stood and walked to the window. The sun was climbing now, lighting up the street in a warm gold that made everything look too peaceful for the kind of conversation we were having. Why come back now? I asked, not turning around. Because I don't know how long I have, she said. And I didn't want the last words between us to be silence. I turned. Her eyes were red, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. And I saw something there, not guilt, not desperation, but humility. She wasn't asking me to forgive her. She was just asking to be known before the curtain closed. You know, I said, slowly walking back toward the table, for months, I pictured this moment. You showing up. Me having the upper hand. Saying something clever, something cruel maybe. Making you pay. And now I just want to know what the hell we're supposed to do with this mess. She smiled through her tears. Maybe we don't do anything. Maybe we just sit in it for a while. So that's what we did. We sat in the wreckage together, neither trying to clean it up. And for the first time in a long time, the silence between us didn't feel like punishment. It felt like possibility. Later that day, she left. She said she needed to rest, and I didn't argue. But just before she walked out, she turned and said, "I'll be back tomorrow. If that's okay." I hesitated. And then I said, "Leave the hoodie this time. I kind of missed it." She laughed, genuinely, like it hurt and healed her all at once. And when the door closed, I sat there, staring at the spot she'd just stood in, wondering if the second chapter of our story was going to be a love story, a tragedy, or just two people trying to forgive the versions of themselves they didn't like. But one thing I knew for sure for the first time since she'd knocked on my door, I wanted to find out. She started coming over almost every afternoon after that. Never for long, sometimes an hour, sometimes two, but just enough to leave behind a trace of her presence. A coffee cup on the table, her folded jacket on the back of the chair, a faint scent of rosemary shampoo in the bathroom. It was like she was moving into my world without asking for permission, but not in a way that felt invasive. More like someone tiptoeing into a place they used to call home, testing to see if the walls still recognized them. At first, we didn't talk about the past anymore. We stuck to shallow waters. Old movies. Her taste in music, still awful. My obsession with cereal brands I wasn't supposed to eat anymore. It was safe that way. Familiar. But underneath it all, I could feel something shifting, like a current moving just below the surface. Then came the envelope. It was a manila folder, slightly bent at the corners, that she placed on my kitchen table one rainy Thursday without saying a word. Her hands trembled when she slid it toward me. "What is it?" I asked. "My will," she said quietly. I blinked. "What?" "My updated will. And some medical paperwork." I want you to have it." I stared at her, not touching it. "Why would I?" "Because you're the only person I trust with it," she said. "And if something happens, I don't want some stranger deciding what happens to me. Or to what's left of me." I swallowed the lump in my throat and slowly opened it. Inside were hospital forms, a durable power of attorney document, and a handwritten letter labeled "In case I'm gone." That label alone nearly broke me. I closed it without reading further and pushed it back to her. "I'm not ready to have this conversation," I muttered. She nodded, gently pushing it back to me. "I wasn't ready for any of this, Clive. But the truth doesn't care if we're ready." That night, she didn't go home. It wasn't like the movies. There was no candlelit moment. No whispered apologies followed by slow-motion kisses. We didn't even touch. She just sat next to me on the couch and slowly leaned into me like she needed to feel something real pressing back. We sat like that for hours, my arm awkwardly around her shoulders, her head against my chest, the sound of the rain filling in all the broken spaces between us. And I realized something painful. I still loved her. Not in the nostalgic way, not in the way you love a memory, but in the present. I loved her now. The flawed, scarred, older version of her. The one who betrayed me. The one who returned. The one who might leave again, this time for good, but not by choice. That terrified me. Because loving her again meant risking it all over again. But the scariest part was knowing I'd already made the decision without even realizing it. The next morning, she was still asleep on the couch when I went for a walk, something I hadn't done in a long time. The air was cool, and the streets were quiet. I walked to the bakery down the road, got her favorite croissant, and returned just in time to see her sitting on the couch, holding the framed photo from my shelf. The one of us. From before. She looked up. "You never replaced it." "I didn't replace anything," I said. "I just stopped dusting around it." She smiled weakly. "Do you ever think we could?" "I don't know. Try again." It hit like a brick to the chest. Part of me had been waiting for her to ask that. Another part had been dreading it. "I think," I said slowly, "we're already trying." She nodded, biting her lip. And then she said something I didn't expect. "I lied to you. There's something else." I tensed. "About what?" "About Simon." My jaw clenched. "What about him?" "He showed up at my house last month. Drunk. Angry. Said I ruined his life. That he'd left someone else for me. Some woman he was seeing seriously. He thought we were going to be something." I stared at her. "Were you?" "No," she said firmly. But I didn't exactly stop him from believing it, either. I used him, Clive. And when I saw how broken he was, I realized I had become someone I didn't even recognize. She wiped a tear from her cheek. That's when I called you. I didn't come looking for redemption. I came because I realized the only person who ever saw me completely, and still stayed, was you. And I threw that away. Twice. I sat down beside her. She didn't reach for me. She didn't try to touch my hand or lean into my shoulder. She just waited. Waited to see if I would walk away again. I didn't. Instead, I looked her in the eyes and said the only honest thing I could. If I lose you again, Dina, it's going to destroy me. She didn't respond. She just nodded, leaned forward, and rested her forehead against mine. And for the first time in over a year, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I felt like someone who had finally started to breathe again, even if it hurt with every breath. It's been 4 months since that night on the couch. 4 months since we laid all the ugliness out between us like broken glass and decided, together, not to tiptoe around it anymore. And yeah, I still get nervous some mornings. I still wake up wondering if the version of reality I'm living in is real, or if I'll blink and find myself back in that hollow apartment, watching the light crawl across the ceiling in silence. But she's still here. Not just physically. Though, yeah, she keeps forgetting her keys and still leaves her tea mugs half full all over the place. But here in a way that she hadn't been for years before everything crumbled. We have hard days. Some days she's too tired to leave the bed. Some days I'm so afraid of losing her that I can't bring myself to look at her without tearing up. But we're not pretending anymore. And that's the difference. We go on slow walks when she has the strength. She wears this giant, ridiculous sun hat I bought her as a joke, and I swear she does it just to embarrass me. We sit on the same park bench every Saturday and feed stale breadcrumbs to birds that look more judgmental than hungry. It's not grand. It's not cinematic. But it's ours. And after everything we went through, I don't need anything more than that. Dina finished her last round of treatment 2 weeks ago. The scans came back clean. I cried when the doctor said the word remission. She didn't. She just stared at the floor and whispered, "I didn't think I'd ever hear that." And then she looked at me like it wasn't just her life that had been handed back, like we'd both been returned from the edge. A week after that, we visited our old house. The one I left without a word. It was still on the market, stale listing, overgrown yard. We stood outside for a long time, just watching it. She turned to me and said, "We could make it ours again, but not if it stays the same." So we didn't buy it. Instead, we found a new place. Small, simple, with sunlight that pours into the living room in the mornings and a quiet porch where she reads while I ramble about home improvement projects I'll probably never finish. We framed that photo, the one she held in my apartment, but we also added a new one beside it. It's just us on the front steps of the new house, barefoot, holding mugs, laughing about something neither of us remembers. But you can tell, we're different now. Softer, more fragile, maybe, but also more present. People ask if I've forgiven her. That's always the question, right? And the truth is, I don't think forgiveness is a switch you flip. It's not a thing you check off a list and move past. It's something you choose every day. Every time you look at the person who hurt you, and also held you, and say, "I still see you. I still want this. Let's keep going." So yeah, I forgave her. And in the process, I think I started forgiving myself, too, for walking away, for not knowing how to stay, for not asking sooner what she was hiding behind all those cold smiles. Sometimes people come back not because they want to fix the past, but because they finally understand how to build a future. And sometimes, you let them in, not because you've forgotten the pain, but because, against all odds, love managed to survive it. That's what we are now. Survivors. Together. And this time, I'm not going anywhere.